My wife told me, not tonight or any night. That was it, the end. So I shifted my time, focus, and energy elsewhere. A few days later, she wanted forgiveness, but I was already done. Hey everyone. Before diving into today's story, I need your help. The channel's growth has slowed a bit, and subscribing is the best way you can support us. It's quick, free, and it keeps us motivated to bring you more content. Your support really matters. So let's keep building this community together. Thank you. Now, let's get into it. I'm a 34-year-old guy, and I can still recall the exact moment Jessica, my 32-year-old wife, said those words. Not tonight, or any night. The certainty in her voice froze me. We'd been married 6 years. Things weren't perfect, but I never imagined she'd permanently shut down our intimate life. A bit of background. I work as a marketing manager at a mid-sized tech firm in the Midwest. It's not glamorous, but it pays well, and I've been moving up for the past 8 years. Jessica and I met in college. She studied psychology. I studied business. We hit it off quickly, both ambitious, but grounded. After 3 years of dating, we had a modest wedding with close family and friends. She became an HR consultant, made decent money, and about 4 years ago, we bought a 3-bedroom house in a nice suburb. No kids. We agreed to focus on our careers first. Our life was steady. We both contributed, traveled twice a year, 1 beach vacation, 1 trip to visit family, had a circle of couple friends. It wasn't extraordinary, but it was comfortable. At least, that's how I saw it. The evening it all shifted, started normally. I came home drained after a 10-hour day and a rough client presentation. I expected takeout, maybe a movie with Jessica, but as soon as I walked in, something felt different. She was at the kitchen island, locked on her phone with unusual focus. We had dinner, talking about the usual her office drama, my deadlines. Later, in the living room, she kept scrolling, probably on one of those feminist Instagram accounts she'd been into lately while I watched TV. When I leaned over to kiss her neck, something that always made her smile, she jerked away sharply. Don't, she said flatly, not even glancing up. You haven't been in the mood for weeks, I replied, trying to stay calm. Is everything okay? That's when she finally set her phone down, looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, and said the words that broke me, not tonight or any night. I'm done with that part of our relationship. I froze. How do you even answer that? She gave no explanation, no chance for discussion, just a one-sided decision about something that affected both of us. What exactly do you mean? I asked, hoping I misheard. Exactly what I said, she replied, calm as if she were teaching a child. I like our life together, the house, our friends, the stability, but I'm no longer interested in intimacy with you, or any man. I've been reading about how women are conditioned to provide for men, and I've decided I'm not playing into that anymore. You can accept it or not. It's your choice. She'd been more into online radical feminist spaces lately, but I never thought it would reach this point. So you're just deciding, on your own, that intimacy is over? I asked. I don't need your permission to set boundaries for my body, she shot back. The fact that you think this requires discussion shows how entitled men are. I was stunned. Jessica, this isn't about entitlement. It's about our relationship, our connection. Don't couples who love each other share that. Love doesn't mean I have to perform physical acts I don't want to, she said. When did this change? I asked. 2 months ago. Things felt normal. She shrugged. It's been building. I just finally decided to stop pretending. That night, I slept on the couch. Not because she told me to, but because I couldn't lie next to someone who had just dismantled my view of our marriage. The days that followed were bizarre. We still lived together, ate meals, watched TV, but there was this invisible wall. She acted like her statement was no bigger than deciding to switch grocery stores. 3 days later, I suggested counseling. I'd even found a well-reviewed couples therapist. "We don't share it that need therapy," she said, rolling her eyes. "There's stuff's nothing wrong with me, and I once up be pressured into intimacy just because society expects it. Maybe you need therapy for depending on female validation." Of course, I would never pressure her, but her refusal to even discuss it made me feel like I was living with a stranger. Anything I said was twisted into proof that I was part of some oppressive system. Lying in bed at night, I asked myself if I'd missed signs. Sure, our intimacy had slowed the past year, but that's common in long marriages. We still had date nights, held hands, said "I love you," at least until recently. Now I realized I was just convenient. A co-biller, a social partner, a housemate, nothing more. One Saturday, I tried again. "Jessica, I am trying to respect your feelings, but I need to understand. Did I do something wrong? Can I change something?" She sighed like I was exhausting her. "This is exactly the problem. You think it sets about you. It sets not. It sets about my journey and autonomy. The fact that you sets are asking proves my point." "But we said are married." I pushed. "Your choices affect me too." "So what? You think your entitlement to my body outweighs my right to control it?" That's SEP's patriarchy in action. I walked away defeated. She had framed it so that any disagreement only reinforced her stance. 2 weeks later, I sat in my car outside the house, unable to go in. What was waiting? More cold coexistence. More lectures about how expecting basic connection made me part of the problem. That's when it hit me. I had a choice. Either keep living in this emotional wasteland, or redirect my time and energy towards something healthier. So I started redirecting, not with revenge or drama, but with small personal changes. I set my alarm for 5:30 a.m., an hour before she woke up. That time became sacred. I began with meditation, then exercise, push-ups, sit-ups, short runs. By the time she got up, I was showered, dressed, and focused. "You're up early," she remarked one morning, clearly irritated. "Just making some changes," I replied. She muttered something about toxic masculinity and exercise culture, which I ignored. By the second week, I joined a gym near work. Instead of rushing home to tension, I worked out. The physical effort doubled as therapy, pushing out bitterness and self-pity. I reconnected with old friends Jessica never liked, guys she labeled too problematic. We grabbed lunch or coffee, nothing serious. I didn't even bring up my marriage. These meetups were about rebuilding connections beyond my role as her husband. And I realized something. Many other men were going through similar issues, not the same details, but the same pattern. Partners turning distant, critical, yet still expecting financial and emotional support. One friend's girlfriend suddenly decided his gaming hobby was toxic, even though she'd accepted it for years. Another couldn't post online without his wife correcting him publicly. "You can set win," my buddy Chris said. "The rules keep changing, and we don't set even get a say." That stuck with me. Maybe the solution wasn't to keep playing by those rules, but to stop playing entirely and create a new game for myself. I began setting aside money in a separate account Jessica couldn't access. Nothing drastic that impacted our shared expenses, just redirecting my discretionary spending and gradually building a safety net. At the very least, it gave me a sense of control in a situation where I otherwise felt powerless. After a month of this new routine, I caught my reflection in the mirror and barely recognized myself. Daily workouts had reshaped my body, broader shoulders, a flatter stomach, better posture. The tension that had weighed on me for months was finally easing. But the biggest change was in my eyes. They looked sharp and alive, something I hadn't seen since her declaration. Next, I updated my wardrobe. Nothing flashy, just well-fitted clothes that highlighted my progress and projected confidence. Friends noticed the difference right away. "You've lost weight, haven't you?" Melissa asked during dinner one evening. I smiled and replied, "Just been taking better care of myself." Jessica noticed too, though she disguised her interest with criticism. "Isn't that shirt a little tight?" she said one morning. "Feels like you're trying too hard." Very midlife crisis energy. I simply smiled and left without responding, which seemed to frustrate her even more. My redirection included finances as well. Jessica and I always kept individual accounts, alongside our joint one for household bills. I still contributed my share, but my discretionary spending shifted. The money she had been hinting for a women-only retreat in Costa Rica went instead into a high-yield investment account under my name. I also invested in a photography workshop, something I had once loved but stopped after Jessica complained it took too much of my time. The irony wasn't lost on me now. Photography became another form of meditation. I spent weekends hiking to catch landscapes at sunrise, framing shots that drew me fully into the moment. I bought solid equipment, a DSLR and a couple of lenses. Nothing extravagant. My first attempts were rough, but with tutorials and constant practice, I improved quickly. Soon, I had images I was truly proud of. Mountain ranges and golden light frost patterns on leaves, storm clouds sweeping across open fields. I posted my work online, connected with other photographers, and began building a small following. To my surprise, some prints even sold through an online marketplace, creating a modest but growing side income that went straight into my private account. "Where have you been going so early on Saturdays?" Jessica asked after a few weeks. The entitlement in her tone was unmistakable. She wasn't used to me having a life separate from her. "Taking photographs," I said plainly. "Since when are you into photography?" she asked, as though I needed her approval. "I've always been into it, just never had the time until now," I replied. Her face suggested she wanted to ask more, but she held back. Instead, she shifted to complaining. "Well, I needed help with some things around the house last weekend, but you weren't set here. You could have texted me," I said calmly. "Phones work in the mountains." "I shouldn't have to text my own husband for basic help," she snapped. I shrugged. Things change. Those two words lingered between us, and for the first time, I saw something flicker across her expression, a hint that she might be realizing her choices had consequences. At work, my new focus paid off. I tackled projects with energy and clarity I hadn't felt in months. Rob, my manager, noticed immediately. "Whatever you're doing, keep it up," he said after I closed a major client. "You're on fire lately." His compliment carried weight. After months of feeling unwanted at home, professional recognition filled some of that emptiness. I even began volunteering for travel assignments. I once avoided to spend more time with Jessica, a 3-day conference in Chicago, a training in Denver, a client meeting in Boston. Each trip was refreshing. Hotel rooms without judgment, meals without criticism, conversations free of ideological debates. During my Denver trip, I reconnected with Tom, an old college friend. We hiked in the mountains, and I captured some of my best shots yet. When I posted them, my following grew, and I sold 3 prints within a week. "You could really turn this into something serious," Tom said as we rested. "Your eye for composition is strong." His words planted a seed. Maybe photography wasn't just a hobby, it could be something more. 3 months into this redirection, I was sleeping better, looking healthier, and excelling at work. The irony was clear. Jessica's withdrawal had unintentionally pushed me to become stronger. She didn't know I had also opened a separate checking account, funneling half my paycheck and all bonuses there. The other half still covered my share of expenses. Slowly but steadily, I was building an escape fund. I wasn't planning to leave immediately, but I wanted options. One evening, as I grabbed my camera bag to head to a photography meetup, Jessica asked, "Are you seeing someone else?" The audacity was striking. She had unilaterally ended intimacy, but still expected exclusive access to my time and attention. No, I said truthfully. Why would you ask that? I've changed, she replied. I've hardly ever home anymore. Her sudden concern was almost laughable. I said just investing my time in things that fulfill me. I answered evenly. Is instead that what you said been doing? That's different, she shot back. Clearly irritated I'd used her own reasoning. I made personal choices about my time and interests. I countered. Same as you did. Seems fair to me. So you stir punishing me? She asked. Not at all. I stim adapting. You set a boundary, and I respect it. Now I stim setting mine. She had no response, and I left. Driving to my photography group, I realized something had shifted. For the first time since her declaration, I wasn't waiting for her to change her mind. I was too busy creating a life that didn't revolve around her approval. At the meetup, I met David, who worked for a local magazine. After flipping through my shots, he said, "These are excellent. We're always looking for local talent. Interested in submitting?" Just like that, another door opened. That night, Jessica was already in bed when I returned, likely irritated I hadn't been around to listen to her usual complaints. I didn't care. I had bigger things on my mind. 6 months into this journey, my company hosted a retreat at a lakeside resort. After a day of meetings, we gathered by a fire pit under the stars. Emma, a colleague who had joined 3 months earlier, sat down beside me. She was the opposite of Jessica. Warm, supportive, genuinely interested in others. You know, when I started here, people said I was lucky to work with you, she said softly. Really? Why seps that? I asked. They said you turned the department around. But they also mentioned how much you've changed personally. They said you used to seem withdrawn. That doesn't match the person I see now. I paused, then replied. I went through some personal challenges, decided to focus on what I could control. She nodded. Well, it worked. You seem completely in your element. Talking with Emma felt easy, in a way I hadn't experienced in a long time. She was smart, funny, and actually listened. We discovered mutual interests in hiking and photography. When I showed her some of my shots, she leaned closer, genuinely impressed. These are incredible. Have you thought about presenting them professionally? I've started selling prints online. A local magazine may feature some, I said, surprised at how good it felt to share this part of myself with someone who cared. That's amazing, she smiled. I'd love to see more sometime. Her genuine admiration was something I hadn't felt in years. The brief brush of her shoulder against mine was a sharp reminder of how long it had been since I'd experienced even simple human connection. I shifted slightly, unwilling to cross a line before resolving my situation with Jessica. Later, as the group dispersed, Emma invited me to join a sunrise hike. Perfect light for your photos, she said. I agreed. The next morning, standing on a ridge as the sun painted the horizon, I captured dozens of shots, but found my lens drawn repeatedly to Emma's profile against the colors of dawn. She embodied everything I had been missing: interest, respect, genuine conversation. But I knew I needed to close one chapter before even thinking about another. When I returned home that Sunday, Jessica was suddenly in the kitchen making dinner, something she hadn't done in months. The timing felt calculated. How was the retreat? She asked, sounding unusually attentive. Productive, I replied, setting my bag down. We finalized the next quarter sip strategy. She nodded, then said, I saw some of the photos you posted. Beautiful location. It was. I agreed, watching her carefully. That woman in some of the pictures, is she on your team? She asked, catching me off guard. I hadn't realized Emma appeared so often in my uploads. That's Emma, our new marketing specialist, I answered evenly. She's very attractive, Jessica noted, her eyes narrowing as if studying my reaction. The irony of her possessiveness struck me, especially from someone who had explicitly rejected me. I hadn't noticed. I lied, feeling oddly defensive. Really, you've taken at least a dozen photos with her in them. Seems like you noticed plenty. The accusation was clear in her tone. I measured my reply. She happened to be in frame during group activities. Why are you asking about this? You Steph already made it clear that certain parts of our relationship are over. You don't get to dictate who I interact with professionally. Jessica turned back to the stove, clearly irritated that I wasn't apologizing or offering further explanation. Just curious about your colleagues. That's all. I have a right to know who my husband spends time with. That was the moment I decided to speed up my exit plan. Her one-sided expectations had become impossible to bear. The following week, she surprised me. Jessica began initiating conversations, asking about my day, even suggesting we watch shows together. She cooked several dinners, and for once left out the usual ideological lectures. It felt like living with the woman I had married years ago, before she became someone unrecognizable. But I knew exactly what was happening. She sensed me drifting away and was trying to pull me back under her control. The realization strengthened my resolve. This wasn't about revenge, it was about survival. Two events aligned to create the perfect opportunity. First, I received a major promotion at work, with a substantial raise and increased travel. I kept the news to myself, offering her nothing despite her sudden interest in my life. Second, through my professional network, I learned her company was preparing for significant layoffs after a merger. Her department was expected to be hit hard. This wasn't insider trading or anything improper, just the kind of information that circulates in a mid-sized city. I even helped a colleague's spouse secure a role at a competitor weeks earlier, knowing Jessica's skills would soon be in demand. I could have done the same for her with a single phone call, but chose not to. Instead, I moved quickly, quietly consulting a lawyer, paying in cash from my separate account. I learned exactly how to protect myself financially in divorce. I documented Jessica's statements about ending intimacy, her behavior afterward, and anything that might strengthen my case. Through casual conversations, I also discovered she'd been bad-mouthing me to friends and family, portraying herself as a victim of patriarchy, conveniently leaving out her unilateral decision to end a core part of our marriage. That sealed it. My exit had to be complete and final. 2 weeks later, her company announced the layoffs. Jessica came home visibly shaken. My department could be cut next month, she said, clearly expecting comfort. That's tough, I replied politely, but nothing more. I'm sure you still figure it out. The cuts came sooner than expected. The next Friday, she walked in crying. I lost my job. They eliminated our whole department. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, keeping my expression neutral. What's your plan? My plan? I just lost my job. I need time to process. Of course, take the time you need. But our financial obligations don't stop. Let me know how you still continue contributing to the household. Her jaw dropped. Are you serious? I set in crisis, and you are asking about bills? Just being practical. We always contributed equally, haven't we? That was your position. The next morning, I acted. While she was in the shower, I moved nearly all funds from our joint account into my private one, leaving just enough to avoid overdraft. Then I packed essentials and valuables. When she came out, I was waiting with divorce papers. What's this? She asked, staring at the documents. Divorce papers, I replied calmly. I deserve better than a one-sided marriage with someone who unilaterally changed the rules without discussion or compromise. Her face shifted from shock to anger. You can be serious. Just because I wouldn't set sleep with you, that sets what this is about. No, it seps about respect and reciprocity. You made a unilateral choice that affected us both and expected me to accept it. That seps not partnership. So you stir running off with your little work girlfriend? Predictable. This has nothing to do with Emma. It sets about you, me, and the broken agreement between us. By the way, ISEPs transferred our joint funds into a separate account. You still have access only through settlement. Her face paled. You did what? I just lost my job. How am I supposed to pay for anything? Not my problem, I said, echoing the dismissive tone she once used on me. Actions have consequences. This is financial abuse, she shouted through tears. I need that money for necessities. No, this is accountability. The mortgage is due next week. Your half is listed in the documents. She panicked. Please, you can do this. I need time. You should have considered that before declaring second not tonight. Or any night. You wanted independence from second patriarchal expectations. Second, congratulations. You have complete independence now. Over the next week, her behavior changed dramatically. The feminist rhetoric vanished, replaced by pleas and bargaining. She suggested counseling, hinted at intimacy, even tried seduction one night, which I rejected outright. On my lawyer's advice, I stayed in the house for the time being. The atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Jessica's friends called, condemning me as cruel, but I blocked their numbers. Her parents reached out, suggesting a meeting. I declined politely. Your daughter made her choice months ago. I told her father, I'm simply making mine. 2 weeks later, Jessica hit rock bottom. No job, no savings, bills piling up. She approached me in tears. Please, I can do this alone. I need your help. That seps interesting, I said evenly. Weren't you the one who insisted women don't need men? That marriage is just a patriarchal construct? That intimacy with me was over by your decree? I was wrong, she whispered. I got caught up in ideas without thinking about the reality. Please, I still do anything, counseling, rebuilding, whatever you want. The problem is, Jessica, I don't want that anymore. You've shown me who you are, someone who treats relationships as transactional, who takes when it benefits her and discards the rest. Now that you need me, suddenly everything changes. That sips not love, it sips opportunism. I stood, picking up my keys. I step moving out tomorrow. The divorce papers are ready. If you contest them, I step am prepared for a legal battle. If you sign, I step provide a one-time payment to help you transition. Her voice hollowed. You planned this all along, from the moment I said those words. No. I planned it when I realized you saw me as disposable. You taught me the importance of self-worth. For that, oddly enough, I should thank you. The next day, I moved into an apartment I'd already secured. Jessica signed the papers without contest, accepting the settlement. She moved back with her parents in another state, her former ideals seemingly set aside for practicality. I built my new life, progressing in my career, expanding my photography business, maintaining fitness, and eventually beginning a genuine relationship with Emma, who showed me what real partnership means. 6 months later, my first photography exhibition opened at a local gallery. Among the photos was a sunrise landscape from that company retreat. The morning I realized I deserved better. The real victory wasn't depriving Jessica of security. It was becoming the man I should have been, confident, self-sufficient, unwilling to accept anything less than mutual respect. Sometimes she still tries to contact me, especially when struggling. I keep communication minimal, strictly about unresolved legal matters. Mutual friends eventually learned the truth, and while some thought I was harsh, most understood. But here's the thing about consequences. They're not cruel or kind. They're simply the natural outcome of choices. Jessica dismantled the foundation of our marriage, yet expected it to stand. When it collapsed, she faced the result of her own decisions. This experience taught me self-respect is not selfish, it's essential. Sometimes, the strongest response to being treated as disposable is to quietly agree and walk away, not in anger, but with the certainty that you deserve more than they're willing to give. If you see yourself in my story, remember you have choices. You don't have to accept unilateral changes to your marriage. You don't have to sacrifice yourself for someone else's ideology. And you don't need permission to build a fulfilling life. When someone changes the rules without your input, they're showing exactly how much they value your voice. Listen carefully, not just to their words, but to their actions.